So I want to introduce you to a friend as we get started, a friend that I had not thought of for quite some time. He was a friend from college until this week, and he popped into my head. It was my junior year of college at Indiana Wesleyan, Hodson Hall, and my roommate and I decided that we needed to bring some wildlife into the room. And the rule at Indiana Wesleyan was you could have a pet as long as it could live underwater. And so we decided that we were going to get fish, but we didn't want just the normal fish, like the goldfish that they die after 5 days and you have to replace them. We wanted a shark. And now, so you can buy things that are of the shark family. They don't look like sharks. I'll show you a picture of our little guy right there. And I know he doesn't look like a shark, but he is of the shark family. And so we buy him and we bring him back to the little tank and we put him in, and he was... The only way to describe it, he was nuts. There was something wrong with this fish. Mentally, he had a psychological issue. Okay, that really freaks me out, all of you walking out like that. It's fine, though. I'm going to stay focused on this story. So he had a psychological issue. He was, to put it nicely, very adventurous. Okay, he was an adventurous little guy. He was a free spirit. He did what he wanted, crazy. So we gave him a name that we felt reflected his mentality. We named him Dan. Because it's a very popular name for a fish. And Dan, when I say that he was crazy, he ate the plastic plants that we had in there. He didn't eat the fish food so much. He gnawed on some rocks. He ate the plastic plants. One of his favorite things to do was to pick fights with the filter up at the top. He actually lost his eye in one of those battles. And so, and I don't know if you've ever seen a fish without an eye, but it will eventually heal over. The body will heal. He ate the eye that was at the bottom of the cage. I know that's gross, but it's true. Dan was a little bit off in all of this. And anytime we would open the top of the thing to feed him, the dude would try to breach. You know, like a great white comes up out. I don't know if mentally he thought of himself that way, but he would always swim to the top and he was always nuts. So anyway, the point of this story, we got to spring break in March of that year, my junior year. And we decided we had to, since we're leaving them, we had to put a feeder in there so that it would feed the fish and keep them alive. But we knew it was a risk because the feeder props the lid of the tank open just a little bit. But we went ahead and we did it. And then when we got back from spring break, we saw it. Now, I think maybe there's a picture of the scene somewhere, but I didn't want to dig it up because it brings back too many awful memories. So I let AI kind of help with what we saw. This is what we saw when we got back. And we put the little chalk outline around him. Dan had breached the water, jumped out of the tank, and was laying on the ground decomposing when we got back from spring break. So we buried him in the front yard of Hodson Hall, put a little cross up, and then landscaping just mowed over the top of it, and that was the end of Dan. Sometimes I think about Dan, and I think about that brief moment of flight that he had when he was out of the water, and the excitement that he probably felt. He had finally pulled it off. He had escaped the cage. He's so happy. He's so free, and then he hits the ground and kind of lays there for a minute and looks around, and and it's all over for Dan in that moment. Now, this is why this was on the top of my mind. I'm thinking of him this week because he has provoked me to do something that I don't normally do. My ecclesiology, that means my view of the church, is pretty well settled on this. That the whole point of this gathering that meets every week that we do here at Jerome, and there are gatherings that meet in other places in our community and around the world, this gathering of the local body that we call the Church of Jesus, the point of that gathering is to disciple the brothers and the sisters. Those of us who are Christians, that is the point of this gathering. It's to edify believers. It's to brace us up in a world that is opposed to everything that we believe and is pulling us and tempting us. We are to spur one another on to love and good deeds. That is what the purpose of this meeting is. And I try to be responsible for my job, which is to proclaim the apostles' doctrine every week that I'm on the stage. I want to encourage faithfulness among Christians. Now, what that means is, if you want to think of it in a practical sense, the means that services here that we hold every week are not designed with the intent of evangelizing lost people. That's not it. We believe in evangelizing. As Christians, we go out and we share our faith and we encourage people to have the same beliefs that we have and to be set free in the way that we have been set free. But that's not the point of this gathering. But today, because of Dan, I am breaking protocol. I'm not going to do what I normally do. I'm not going to do what I think it is my job to do, in fact, and I'm hoping the elders will just sleep through that. I want to speak specifically to those of you who are not normally here. And I'm going to do it in this service, and I'm going to do it in the next service. I want to speak directly to you, those who are here this morning as a courtesy to family members, but you yourself don't need church because at least in your mind you have it all under control. Sometimes things get out of control, but for the most part, you're good. Life is okay. I want to speak to those who really aren't into church. Those of you who aren't into the rules that Christians have to follow. I kind of set my own rules, and I don't want to have to follow rules that are given to me. Those who, like Dan, are living free. You've broken free, you are free, and you're doing what you want to do. And I want to speak to you directly because unlike Dan, thankfully, you have not yet hit the floor. And so I want to speak to you before that day comes. You're here, and so I would like to tell you what you are not getting out there. In the world out there that is saying exactly what you want to hear, is tempting you to continue in the ways that you have always lived, I want to tell you something that you will never hear from them. I want to tell you the truth. That's what I'm going to do this morning with my time. The world is promising you freedom, and you have bought it. The world is promising you freedom through self-indulgence and self-rule and independence. That's what they sell, that if you want to be free, do what you want to do. Believe like you want to believe. You are the God of your own little universe. Meanwhile, you have all of these people that attend church and they're living under someone else's rules. If you want to be free, do what you want to do. Indulge yourself in your own desires. And like most people, you've bought it because it's what you want. It's what we all want. And by the way, I'm not shaming you because most everyone who does attend here regularly, most of us believed like that at one point too. But just like most lies, pretty much all lies, it's undone when you stop feeling what you want to feel and instead think. It's like in high school, I teach over at Eastern, and you'll see relationships that it is obvious to anybody and everybody, this is not a good relationship for this young woman. But she convinces herself, no, he's really great. He brought me flowers and he told me that he loved me. Yes, that is true. He also got those flowers after he murdered the florist. So it's really not a great relationship for you. Okay, and as soon as you stop feeling the things that you want to feel and believing what you want to believe and start thinking through what is going on, all of a sudden the lie becomes undone. The world is telling you this, that freedom is being who you want to be. I'm going to tell you that's not what freedom is. I'm going to proclaim to you what the Bible tells us, and it tells us that freedom, real freedom, is being who you ought to be, being who you were designed to be, not whoever it is that you particularly feel you want to be in that moment. What does this look like? Okay, I'm going to expose the lie to you for a second. And maybe you've never thought of this before. And some of you will hear this and you'll get defensive because it flies against what you feel and what you want. I understand that, but I still need to proclaim it to you. What does it look like when you live the way that you want to live? We tell ourselves that we're building a life on our own terms, right? We're going to travel where we want. We're going to sleep with whoever we want. We're going to buy what we want. We're going to talk like we want. That's freedom, baby. I am the God of my own universe. I'm the captain of my own ship. I'm doing what I want to do. But beneath the surface, when we live this way, we're trapped and we don't even realize it. We don't know that we're trapped. We think that more money is going to make us more free. And so what do? We work really hard. But the more we earn, we quickly realize the more we need. You ever notice that? At one point in time, when you first began, and Jenny and I were living in the Mill Street apartment, paying $300 a month for rent, we believed we were living from hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck. And man, one day, because I'm a teacher, I'm going to be making a fat salary. And when I have that fat salary, man, we're going to be living large. And now I make a lot more money than I did when I first started. And you know what I found? We're living paycheck to paycheck, baby. It's the exact same. The more we have, all of a sudden, the more it is that we need. We need a bigger cushion. We need a bigger house. We need a newer car. If you're not picking up on this, do you see how the bar in your life continues to move? You're picking up on that, yes? Tell me that you're always chasing something. When you are always chasing something that you will never reach, can I tell you, that isn't freedom. You are a slave to a bar that you can never attain. That isn't freedom. That's maddening is what it is. And even worse, have you noticed how much you and I are slaves to what if? As I'm trying to build this life for myself, I've got in the back of my mind, what if the market crashes? I don't think Trump knows what he's doing, and these tariffs are going to wreck the economy. And what's going to happen to my 401k? I better get all the money out now and buy a bunch of gold. That's what I've got to do. What if that happens? What if I get laid off from my job and I'm not getting that sweet teacher paycheck? What happens if we get sick and I use up all of my sick days and I eventually lose my job? I can't control that. Do you realize, as much as I think I'm God of my own little universe, I have no control over these things? And I'm haunted by that. And the reality of all of that, all that I do and all that you do to avoid all of those what ifs and those things, I go on a diet and deprive myself of the stuff I actually want to eat. Is that freedom? All of the exercise, I get on that stupid Peloton bike and have that person scream at me about how I gotta believe in myself. I just want to put my fist right through that screen. I don't want to do that. Am I free? And all the reading, every article on preventative health and how I can make sure that I don't get whatever disease it is, I can never outrun genetics. And I can never outrun the laws of nature. Those lines on my face continue to get deeper and broader, and my hair continues to turn grayer. I remember, man, when I was the young guy at Eastern and I looked like a student, and now all the students make fun of all of the hair, and they're the reason I've got the gray hair that I've got. It's really frustrating to me. We know it. All of us know this, so the fear is always there. It's always humming in the background of your life. Is that lump normal? I don't think I felt that before. Is this pain something more than just a typical back pain? I know I was working in the backyard, but what if this is something worse than that? The beginning signs of it. You and I are always anxious because of these things. And if you're living a life where you are always anxious and you are always chasing a bar that you can never attain, that isn't freedom. You're being restricted. You're being held back. Our relationships betray the exact same thing. We say we don't want to be tied down. We don't want to be tied down. We want space. Space to be ourselves, to be free. We interpret commitment when we're young, we interpret that as the end of fun and freedom. And consequently, we walk away from people who actually love us, chasing the idea that it's great to have no strings attached. But pretty soon, we're going to find that love isn't a prison chain. In fact, what we find is that love is actually a root. And without that root, you're drifting helplessly out there. Drifting. And we want to leave a mark on the world, but how in the world do you leave a legacy when you've built absolutely nothing that lasts? You're just helplessly drifting from one relationship to another. And for many of us, that is the logical end of the mess that we have been creating from day one. We partied hard in our youth. We enjoyed our youthful days. We loved the scene, and we loved the music, and we loved the energy. But at some point, the club, it stops being exciting. And that club starts feeling really sad. You know why it feels sad? Because we look around one day in that club and we recognize the futility of what we're doing. We're trying so hard to be young in a room that is slowly, every day, every month, every year, seemingly getting younger and younger and younger. And we can't keep up. We aren't dancing anymore. We're clinging desperately. We don't want to grow old. We don't want to look old, and so we fight it. But in trying to stay young forever, we're losing the peace and the wisdom that comes from aging gracefully. And we find that we are lonely. When you're lonely and you're anxious and you're chasing a bar that you will never reach, that isn't freedom. And if you've bought the idea from the world that it is freedom, it's going to catch up with you and you're going to realize it. And by the way, it's the same thing that we experience professionally. We keep climbing an endless ladder, promotion after promotion after promotion. And every time we hope that this will be the one that will let us breathe and let us relax. Now we've arrived, and yet we quickly realize we've never arrived, because there's always a next, and there's always someone ahead of us, always someone that we're chasing. And if we're honest, we quickly see that there is no finish line. We're caught in endless motion without any meaning whatsoever. I'm going to tell you, friends, That isn't freedom. You're not free. You're bound by a system that you can't get out of. This right here, what I have just laid out for you, described many people in this room at one point in time. And what I just laid out for you describes some of you in this room right now. The ones that are either feeling somewhat convicted, you're feeling somewhat uncomfortable, or you're feeling pretty defensive, and you're saying, well, he's not accurately representing it. It's describing you. You see, Satan's greatest trick has been to convince us that we are living in freedom when in actuality we are living nothing but an illusion in our own mind. He is the master false teacher. He is the father of those that the Apostle Peter indicted in divine words 2,000 years ago when he wrote, "They promised them freedom while they themselves are slaves of depravity." For people are slaves to whatever has mastered them. And we wear blinders and we walk around and boast and brag about being free, and yet the truth is we have been mastered. You are mastered. We are willful and obedient slaves to other people's expectations. You are a willful and an obedient slave to your own dreams and aspirations that you think you need to live up to, and quickly you realize that you are never going to live up to. You are a willful and obedient slave to society's demands. You've got to be on the right side of this issue. You've got to hashtag the right thing at the right time. You've got to be part of this movement, and you've got to say this and support these people, otherwise you're cut off. You are a slave to your own sexual lusts and urges. We even start declaring them our identity, and we have no choice but to follow through with them. You are a willful and obedient slave to your guilt and to your past mistakes. And what I'm telling you is that right there isn't freedom. And Jesus came to give us these rules and a way of living as a way to keep us from those chains. We think, our sinful minds believe that Christianity's rules will deprive us of freedom, when in actuality, Christ's rules are to free us from the bondage and the slavery of the illusion that Satan has tricked us into living. Let me read to you from Romans chapter 6. Listen to what Paul writes here, verses 16 through 18. Don't you know that when you offer yourselves to someone and obey him as slaves, you are slaves to the one whom you obey? Whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or to obedience, which leads to righteousness. But thanks be to God that though you used to be slaves to sin, and this is describing so many people in this room, and it could be everyone in this room, you wholeheartedly obeyed the form of teaching to which you were entrusted. You have been set free from sin and have become slaves to righteousness. Yes, when you come to Christ, God's laws will limit you. They limit you like rules in sports do. You ever played a sport? You've ever watched a sport? The rules will annoy you at some point in time because you want to cheat. You want to get the head start. You want to interfere with the pass before it gets there to the receiver. You want to do all of those things, and when you get caught violating the rules, it stings and you don't like it. Now imagine trying to play a sport or watch a sport where there are no rules, where the other team jumps across the line of scrimmage and attacks your quarterback before the play began. But there's no rules, so they can. And when I say attack your quarterback, I don't mean just tackle him. They knife him. They stab him right there. How are you going to win the game? Your quarterback's dead at the 30-yard line. Imagine a game where there are no rules whatsoever. That isn't freedom. That isn't anything that we enjoy. Yes, God's laws limit us. They limit us like guardrails on the overpass do. God's laws limit us the same way that lids on fish tanks do. I'm not talking to a room of stupid people. You're smart. You know this. So you tell me which one of these looks like the joy of freedom to you? This or this? A melee at the, whatever, I can't even see the yard line because the teams, you've even got guys in yellow jackets out here, fans that are getting involved in the melee. Is there a game going on there? Is there enjoyment and joy there? Does this look like freedom, the joy of freedom? Or does this look like freedom and the joy of freedom? Does this look like freedom and the joy of freedom? R.I.P. Sweet little Dan. Or does that look like freedom? You know the answer to this question. Why are we buying the illusion and the lie that Satan is weaving for us? Living without Christ doesn't make you free. It makes you subject to a cruel master of sin that I just laid out for you is leading you down this path of misery. And living with Christ is not bondage. It is joyful submission to a good and a benevolent and a generous and a loving King, under whose guidance and leadership you can live in safety and peace. You see, freedom isn't the absence of authority, it's the presence of peace. Freedom isn't the absence of authority, it's living under the right authority and living under your own rules and your own guidelines, guided by the spirit of the age and your sinful lusts. That isn't the right authority. But since we're being blunt and honest with each other this morning, I need to tell you that this isn't even the half of it. This isn't even the good part of what Christ brings. I want you to imagine your life as a rope. I've spoken of this before to this congregation. This is your life right here. We know from Scripture, and we know from science, we know from reality, that we have souls, and those souls are not made for this time and place. Our lives are made to go on forever. This rope represents that life. And I'm going to zoom in right here where the man is holding that rope. And what you see at the very end of that rope is a piece of black electrician's tape, and it's wrapped around that rope. And that piece of black electrician's tape represents this life right here on earth. The end of that electrician's tape is when your soul departs from this human body and it lives forever in one place or the other. Do you realize how many of us are obsessing over that right there? That's what we live for. It's all that we care about. It's why you are so focused on the here and the now, because you want to make sure you get as much out of this time of the electrician's tape as you possibly can. It's what your whole focus is. It's why you live the way that you live. And the question that I'm asking you this morning is, what about that? Why are we not thinking anything about that? You see, we try so hard not to think about the end of the electrician's tape. We don't like thinking about the end of the electrician's tape. There's an interesting verse in Hebrews. It says that Christ Jesus came into the world to free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. You know why we try to avoid thinking of the end of the electrician's tape? Because we're scared of the end of the electrician's tape. We fear death. We're all held captive by this fear at one point in our lives. Several of you have realized, like 3 of the last 6 weeks I've been gone. It was really unfortunate. We had a spring break, but then I had 2 speaking engagements that happened right around the same time. And last week, Palm Sunday, Jenny and I were in Vermont, and I was speaking in Vermont, and we got on the plane to come home. And we sat there, right, where you get on and you sit in your seat and you're waiting for them to back up and all get ready to go. And we didn't move, and we didn't move. And 10 minutes turned into 15, turned into 20, turned into 30, 40 minutes. And we're sitting there and people are getting really, really annoyed. And you can hear people rumble, some idiot probably didn't go through the proper procedure. And who's the passenger that's the big problem? And everybody's grumbling about it. And then the captain comes over and announces that the reason we've been delayed is that there is an engine problem. And maintenance is out checking the engine. And they're going to rev up the engines 3 times to make sure that the problem has been resolved. Do you know the moment that he announced what the actual problem was on this delayed plane, everybody was fine with the delay? Every single person on that plane shut up and said, fine, take your time. Rev it up 5 times, 6 times. Just make sure it's good. And I don't know what is wrong with me, but I looked at Jenny because I was sitting there thinking how fun it would be in that moment to be one of the maintenance guys that's walking around on the ground out there outside the plane and everybody's looking out there. They know there's an engine problem. I would love to be one of those maintenance guys with the headset, and you just walk up with a broom handle and beat the snot out of the bottom of the engine and then just yell up at the cockpit, all right, try it now. I would love to be that guy. It'd be my only day as a maintenance guy at the airport. We finally get told that we're going to go, and some guy trying to be funny as the flight attendant's walking down said, I was getting kind of nervous because it's April 11th. That's the day the Titanic sank. And nobody found that joke funny. It was like, shut up, dude. Nobody wants you to talk like that. And why is everybody upset about that? Why was everybody a little apprehensive? Because all of a sudden, though we had spent that whole day not thinking about the end of our electrician's tape, all of a sudden, when you got an engine problem on your plane that you're about to start sailing through the air at 500 miles an hour at 35,000 feet, you start thinking a little bit about the end of that rope. We have this fear of death. We're held in bondage by it. Man does all he can to stop thinking about this inevitability. And why? Because you, as much as you think you're God of your own universe and you're calling the shots, you have no control over it whatsoever. We have no escape from it. No matter what we do, we can't escape it. And man, we try to do a lot. Ray Kurzweil, you know that name? That's a guy who works for Google. He believes that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to solve the problem of death. And he's desperately trying to keep himself alive until our artificial intelligence gets to that point and he can live forever. And you know what he's done? He spends $5,000 a day on vitamin supplements. Takes 250 vitamins. The little bit of food that he actually eats, it's some of the weirdest infused food that you could ever imagine. And you and I both know what's going to happen. He's going to be the most ripped, awesome 80-year-old that you have ever seen, and he's going to go out to get his mail, and some teenager driving the mail truck's going to be texting and go off the road and mow over the most ripped 80-year-old that has ever existed. You cannot control it no matter what you try to do, and we try so much. By the way, when we are eating coffee beans infused with apricots, and you're doing that instead of eating the second full pizza that you want to eat, let me ask you, is that freedom? Are you doing what you want to do? Who wants the apricot-infused coffee beans? I said that right, yes? Not the coffee-infused. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants that. In other words, to truly be free, you have to solve the problem of death, or it controls you. Have you solved that problem of death? This is why the Apostle John writes these words. Chapter 8, verse 31. To the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Jesus replied to them, "I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So," he says, "if the Son has set you free, then you will be free indeed." Why? Because the Son is the one that offers the escape from death. And that's the only way to be truly free. The real problem with our sin isn't what it does to us physically. It's not what it does, all the messes and the headaches that we cause for ourselves with our sin that God's rules actually protect us from. That's great, but that isn't the big problem of sin. The real problem with sin is it separates us from God. We can't be near him. We can't be in his presence because we have rebelled against him. And imperfection dies when it comes into contact with a perfect and a holy God. It's why Adam and Eve were booted from the Garden of Eden. Not because God was necessarily mad at them, but because if they stayed in his presence as sinful beings, they would die. It's why Aaron's sons that we talked about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, Aaron's sons, good guys, but they walked into the presence of God in the temple and they weren't covered by the blood of a sacrifice. And their imperfection in the presence of a perfect God, they died. It's why the high priests who would go into the most holy place to make sacrifices, I don't know if you're aware of this, on their robes they had bells along the bottom of it and a rope tied to their foot. They would go into the presence of God and make a sacrifice, and if that sacrifice was not worthy, those bells would stop chiming because they'd hit the floor, and everybody else would have to pull them out. A sinful being in the presence of a perfect God will not live. It's why Israel, the night of the Passover, when God's presence was coming through the land of Goshen and through Egypt, they put the lamb's blood over their door. It was the only way to escape it. So my question for you is, what's your plan? How do you plan on escaping death? I can't speak for you. I can only tell you that's why I follow Jesus. That's why I follow Christ. You know what he's called in 1 Corinthians 5:7? This is the phrase of what Jesus is referred to as our Passover lamb. The one under whose blood we can rest and enter into the presence of God. He was without blemish. He was without defect. And he allowed himself to be sacrificed on a cross, which meant he was paying sin's debt of death. But because he had lived perfectly, he didn't owe his own death. So his sacrifice, not owing it himself, served as a sacrifice for me. And I can claim that blood, his resurrection. Why is this day so significant? Because if Jesus dies as a substitute in my place, but he doesn't come back, that means that the sacrifice wasn't good enough, that the curse of death remained. But when that stone rolled back and Jesus walked out smiling in awesome power and glory, that is a sign the sacrifice was effective. that death's curse was now broken forever, and once I accept it, I have eternal life, not once I die, starting right now. I have that. Friends, you want to talk about freedom? Freedom to live under God's benevolent rule, that's the definition of it. And it's not the rule following that does it. It's not being perfect, it's not acting perfect that does it. I want you to think of it this way. Watch this clip.
By the name of Smith and Brown, remarkably Jewish names. The day before the first Passover, having a little discussion in the land of Goshen. And Smith says to Brown, "Boy, are you a little nervous about what's going to happen tonight?" And Brown says, "Well, God told us what to do through his servant Moses. You don't have to be nervous. Haven't you slaughtered the lamb and daubed the 2 doorposts with blood, put blood on the lintel? Haven't you done that?" "Of course I've done that. I'm not stupid." But it's still pretty scary when you think of all the things that have happened around here recently, flies and river turning to blood, and now there's a threat of the firstborn being killed. It's all right for you. You got 3 sons. I've only got 1. And I love my Charlie, and the angel of death is passing through tonight. I know what God says, and I put the blood there, but it's pretty scary. I'll be glad when this night is over. And the other one responds, "Bring it on. I trust the promises of God." That night, the angel of death swept through the land. Which one lost his son? And the answer, of course, is neither. Because death doesn't pass over them on the ground of the intensity or the clarity of the faith exercised, but on the ground of the blood of the Lamb. That's what silences the accuser.
On the grounds of the blood of the Lamb. Listen, I'm not being morbid this morning. I'm just being honest with you. The electrician's tape is running out. You know it. It's running out a lot quicker for some of you than what you care to admit. And when it does, you, like every other human being and human soul that has ever existed, will stand in the presence of a perfect and a just and a holy God who is the judge of all human souls, and the accuser will be there, and he will be putting before that judge all of the sins, all of the failures, all the offenses that you have committed against God. All the things that you've done wrong in your life, he'll lay it out there in front of the judge. And I'm telling you, in that moment, only one plea will save you. Only one. When I started this series a few weeks ago, I said that this was all planned from the start. Christ crucified from the very beginning. He was chosen before time began. And when time ends, and it is no more, his work will remain our only hope. How do I know that? Revelation 12:11 describes exactly how it is going to play out for so many of us in this room. You know what it says? It says that among the brothers, they overcame him, the accuser, by the blood of the Lamb. And here's the thing, what I want desperately is for those words of victory to belong not just to the majority of people in this room. I want it to belong to every single one of us in this room. And if you are ready to give up the illusion that you have been living and make the best decision that you will ever make, would you come right now as we stand and as we sing this song of invitation?